The laundromat smelled like dryer sheets and damp socks, a hum of machines churning through the late afternoon. I sat on a plastic chair, my knees bouncing, phone open to a text I'd typed out but never sent. "Hey, just checking in." It was to nobody, really, just a habit, like I was testing if the words still worked. I'm 27, living in a city that feels too big, and my evenings are spent here, watching clothes spin while the world outside keeps moving. Eleanor runs this place. Mid-40s, maybe older, with dark hair pulled into a loose bun, strands always slipping free. She's the landlady of the building, lives upstairs, and keeps the machines running like it's her personal mission. I've been coming here for months, since I moved into the apartment across the street. She knows my name, Nate, because I fumbled my quarters once, and she helped me pick them up, her fingers brushing mine for half a second too long. I still think about that sometimes, when it's quiet. Today, she's behind the counter, folding towels with this steady rhythm, her hands moving like they've done it 1,000 times. I'm pretending to read an article on my phone, but I'm watching her out of the corner of my eye. She catches me looking, and her mouth quirks up, just a fraction. "You're early today, Nate," she says, not looking up from the towel she's smoothing flat. Her voice is low, warm, like she's telling me a secret even though it's just a fact. "Yeah, ran out of socks," I say, and it sounds dumber than I meant. I rub the back of my neck, feeling the heat there. She laughs, soft, and it's not at me but with me, like we're in on something. I notice her hands pause, fingers lingering on the edge of a towel, her nails chipped but clean. It's a small thing, but it makes my chest tighten. I shove my phone in my pocket, the unsent text forgotten. "You ever get tired of folding?" I ask, nodding at the stack of towels. Stupid question, but I want her to keep talking. "Every day," she says, but she's smiling, her eyes flicking to mine. They're hazel, flecked with gold, and I don't know why I'm noticing that now. But it's better than dealing with the guy who keeps jamming coins in the slots wrong. She raises an eyebrow, and I know she means me, from that first week when I broke machine number 3. I laugh, too loud for the empty laundromat, and it echoes off the linoleum. The silence that follows feels heavy, like the air's holding its breath. She goes back to folding, and I go back to watching the dryer spin, but there's this thread between us now, thin and tugging. When my clothes are done, I load them into my duffel, the warm fabric burning my hands. Eleanor's wiping down the counter, her movements slow, deliberate. I'm about to leave when she says, "Nate, hold up." Her voice is quieter now, almost careful. She steps out from behind the counter, closer than she's ever been, and I can smell her shampoo, something clean, like lavender. "I found this in the dryer," she says, holding out a single sock, my sock, but her fingers linger on it, and her eyes don't leave mine. "Thanks," I say, my voice catching. I take the sock, my hand brushing hers, and it's like that first time with the quarters, only heavier. She steps back, but her gaze stays, and I'm not sure what's happening, but I know I don't want to leave. Not yet. As I sling the duffel over my shoulder, my phone buzzes in my pocket. I don't check it until I'm outside, the laundromat's neon sign flickering behind me. It's a text from an unknown number: "You forgot your detergent. Come back tomorrow. E." I stand there, the street quiet except for the hum of traffic, my thumb hovering over the screen. I don't know what to say back, but I know I'm going tomorrow. I showed up the next day, earlier than usual, the laundromat empty except for the whir of a single dryer. Eleanor was at the back, sorting through a bin of lost items, socks, a glove, a kid's toy. She looked up when the bell jingled, her expression shifting from neutral to something warmer, like she'd been waiting. "Nate," she said, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Detergent's on the counter." I nodded, grabbing the bottle, but didn't leave. My bag of laundry sat at my feet, heavier than it needed to be. Thanks for the text. I'd have been washing with nothing but water otherwise. Lame, but it was out there, hanging in the air like the steam from the machines. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely, her wedding ring gone. I noticed it then, the pale band on her finger where it used to be. Divorce finalized last month, she said, as if reading my glance. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes dropped to the floor for a second, fingers twisting a loose thread on her sleeve. Feels like I'm starting over, you know. At my age. Mid-40s, I guessed, but she didn't look it, not in the way that mattered. I loaded my clothes into a washer, the coins clinking louder than necessary. Yeah, I get that. Moved here after a breakup. Thought a new city would fix things. I paused, water rushing into the drum. It didn't. She poured us both coffee from a thermos behind the counter, the steam curling up between us. Black, no sugar, that's how she took it, and I followed suit, even though I usually loaded mine with cream. We sat on the folding chairs, the kind that creak under weight, sipping in silence. Her knee was close to mine, not touching, but I could feel the heat. I imagined leaning in, what her skin might feel like, then pushed it away. She was older, had a life I didn't know, kids maybe, or friends who'd talk. My friends would laugh, or worse, warn me off. You remind me of my son, she said suddenly, staring into her cup. He's about your age. Left for college and never really came back. Her words hung there, a small truth slipping out, and I felt the risk in it, the age gap staring back at us, making this whatever it was feel off limits. I set my cup down, the ceramic clinking against the table. I'm not him, I said softly, meeting her eyes. She held the gaze, her hand brushing mine as she reached for the thermos, lingering just a beat too long. It wasn't an accident. The laundromat was quieter tonight, the hum of machines softer, like they were holding their breath. Eleanor was sweeping, her movements slow, deliberate, the broom scraping softly against the linoleum. I sat on the counter, my laundry done but my bag untouched by the door. I'd started coming later, matching her closing shifts, not admitting why. Her eyes caught mine when she looked up, and she paused, leaning the broom against a machine. You're gonna wear out that spot, Nate, she said, her voice light but her gaze heavy. I laughed, too quick, my fingers tapping the counter's edge. Better than wearing out my welcome. I wanted to say more, something real, but the words stuck. She stepped closer, close enough I could see the faint lines around her eyes, the ones that made her look lived in, not old. My pulse kicked up, and I wondered what she saw in me, some kid chasing a feeling or something else. She reached past me for her thermos, her arm brushing mine, and didn't pull away. You don't talk much about yourself, she said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Her fingers lingered on mine as she handed me one, and I swear the air thickened. I wanted to tell her about the late night scrolling through old texts, the way I'd moved here to outrun a life that didn't fit anymore. But then I thought of her son, her divorce, the years between us. What was I doing? You don't either, I said instead, my voice low, like I was afraid of breaking something. She smiled, small and sad, and sat on the counter next to me, our thighs inches apart. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable but heavy, like we were both waiting for the other to move first. I could smell her lavender shampoo, see the way her hands fidgeted with the mug's handle. I imagined leaning in, her breath on my cheek, her lips, the bell jingled. A guy, early 30s, walked in, hauling a bulging laundry bag. Hey, Elle, you closing soon? He called, voice too loud for the space. She slid off the counter, her shoulder brushing mine as she moved, and I felt the moment snap shut. Not yet, Mike, she said, her tone shifting to something professional, distant. Mike glanced at me, one eyebrow raised, like he'd caught us at something. Maybe he had. I busied myself with my phone, thumb hovering over a blank text screen. Eleanor helped Mike with his change, her laugh easy but not the same as before. My chest tightened, doubts creeping in. Was I reading too much into this? Was she just lonely, passing time with some guy who showed up too often? I slid off the counter, grabbed my bag. "See you, Eleanor," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. She looked up, her eyes catching mine, and for a second, it felt like she might say something real. Her lips parted, then closed. "Night, Nate," she said, her hand resting on the counter, fingers curling slightly, like she was holding herself back. The street outside the laundromat was slick with rain, streetlights blurring in the wet air. Eleanor had locked up early, her keys jingling as she pulled her coat tight. "Walk with me?" she asked, her voice soft, like she wasn't sure I'd say yes. I nodded, my throat tight, and fell into step beside her. My sneakers squeaked on the pavement, and I shoved my hands in my pockets, unsure where to put them. We didn't talk at first, just walked, the city humming around us, car horns, distant sirens, the patter of rain on awnings. Eleanor's shoulder brushed mine once, twice, and I wondered if it was on purpose. My head was a mess, replaying Mike's raised eyebrow, the way he'd called her hell like he owned it. I'd seen him at the laundromat again yesterday, leaning too close, her laugh too easy. It twisted something in me, sharp and unfamiliar. Jealousy, maybe, but it felt bigger, like I was losing something I didn't even have. "You're quiet tonight," she said, glancing at me. Her hair was damp, clinging to her cheek, and I wanted to brush it away, but my hands stayed stuck in my pockets. "Just thinking," I said, my voice rough. I stopped under a streetlight, the glow catching the lines on her face. She stopped too, looking at me, waiting. I could feel it building, words I'd been swallowing for weeks. "Eleanor, I don't know what this is." My hands came out of my pockets, gesturing at nothing. "You. Me. This. I keep coming back, and it's not just for laundry. But I'm scared I'm reading it wrong." Her eyes softened, but her lips pressed tight, like she was holding something back. She stepped closer, close enough I could see her breath in the cold air. "Nate," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm too old for you. I've got a son your age, a life that's complicated." She paused, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. "But when you're around, I feel seen. Like I'm not just the lady who fixes the machines." My chest ached, like her words had cracked something open. I wanted to tell her she was all I thought about, that her laugh in the laundromat was the best part of my day. But the gap between us, her past, my nothing of a life, felt like a chasm. I reached out, my fingers brushing her sleeve, and she didn't pull away. For a moment, we stood there, rain dripping off the awning, her eyes locked on mine, like she was waiting for me to close the distance. Then a car horn blared, shattering the quiet. She stepped back, her gaze dropping. "We should keep walking," she said, her voice unsteady, and I nodded, my hand falling empty to my side. The laundromat felt wrong without her. I'd shown up at the usual time, bag slung over my shoulder, expecting Eleanor behind the counter, folding towels or sipping from her thermos. Instead, it was Mike, his bulky frame hunched over a clipboard, scribbling something. "She's out," he said, barely looking up. "Family stuff." His tone was clipped, like I was intruding. I loaded my clothes, the clunk of coins too loud in the quiet. My stomach twisted, hope from last night's walk souring into something else. I hadn't texted her back after the rain-soaked moment under the streetlight. I'd typed out "I see you too," my thumb hovering, but it felt too big, too exposed. I deleted it, left the message unsent. Now, her absence stung, like I'd missed a step I didn't know I was climbing. I kept glancing at the door, expecting her to walk in, her hair damp, her smile hesitant, but there. Nothing. Mike caught me staring. "You know she's got a kid, right?" he said, casual but pointed, like he was sizing me up. "Grown, but still her world. And her ex is sniffing around again." He shrugged, like it was just gossip, but it landed like a punch. An ex. A son. Pieces of her life I hadn't touched, hadn't even thought to ask about. My fingers tightened on the detergent bottle, the plastic creaking. I sat on the folding chair, the one we'd shared coffee in, and tried to focus on my phone. The screen blurred, texts I'd never sent, emails I'd ignored. I'd been so caught up in the way she looked at me, the way her hand lingered, I hadn't considered what she was carrying. A divorce, sure, she'd mentioned that, but an ex still circling. A son my age. It made me feel small, young, like I was playing at something she'd already lived through. I thought about last night, her confession about feeling seen, the way her sleeve brushed my fingers. Hope had flared then, bright and reckless, but now it twisted into confusion. Was I just a distraction? A way to feel something new after her marriage crumbled? My chest ached, and I wanted to ask her, to hear her voice cut through the noise in my head. But she wasn't here, and I didn't know when she'd be back. I finished my laundry, the dryers hum a dull roar. Mike was still there, wiping down machines, his presence like a wall between me and her. I zipped my bag, glanced at the counter where her thermos usually sat. Empty. I walked to the door, my hand on the handle, and paused, half expecting her to call my name like she did that first time with the sock. The bell jingled as I stepped out, the street too quiet, my phone heavy in my pocket with words I couldn't send. Eleanor's apartment smelled of coffee and old books, the kind of lived-in warmth that made my chest ache. She'd texted me an hour ago, "Come by. Need to talk." And now I was here, standing in her tiny kitchen, the linoleum cool under my socks. She'd pulled me in from the doorstep, her hand on my wrist, and said, "This stays between us." Her voice was low, urgent, her eyes searching mine like she was scared I'd bolt. She leaned against the counter, her fingers gripping a chipped mug, the steam curling up between us. I stood by the fridge, too aware of the space separating us, the hum of it filling the silence. I'd spent days replaying Mike's words, her ex, her son, wondering if I was just a fleeting thing to her. But her text, the way she looked at me now, made me want to risk it all. "I thought you were gone," I said, my voice rough, like I'd been holding it in too long. "You didn't show up at the laundromat." Mike said. I trailed off, my hands shoving into my pockets, then out again. "He said your ex was back." Her face tightened, her fingers stilling on the mug. "He's not back," she said, quiet but firm. "He called, wanted to meet, but I shut it down. I'm done with that life." She set the mug down, the clink loud in the small space. "But you, Nate, you make me feel like I'm waking up. And it terrifies me." My breath caught. She stepped closer, her hands hovering like she wasn't sure where to put them. I could see the cost in her eyes, the weight of her years, her divorce, the son who didn't call. "I'm too old for you," she whispered, echoing that night in the rain. "I shouldn't want this." "But you do," I said, stepping forward, closing the gap. My hand found hers, her fingers cold but curling into mine. "I'm not your son. I'm not your ex. I'm just, me. And I can't stop thinking about you." The words felt raw, like I'd ripped them out, and I braced for her to pull away, to tell me it was a mistake. She didn't. Her eyes softened, gold flecks catching the kitchen light. "You make it sound so simple," she said, her voice breaking just a little. Her thumb brushed my knuckles, a small, deliberate touch that felt bigger than it was. We stood there, inches apart, the world outside fading to nothing. "Okay," she said finally, so soft I almost missed it. A smile flickered on her lips, hesitant but real, and I felt the tension in my chest unravel, just enough to breathe. Her hand stayed in mine, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was chasing something I'd never catch. 6 months later, the laundromat was still there, but I didn't come as often. Eleanor had hired a part-time kid to handle the evening shifts, and I'd moved half my clothes into her apartment upstairs. This morning, 8:47 a.m., we sat on her tiny balcony, the city waking up below us. She sipped black coffee from her thermos, the same one from those late-night talks, and I drank tea, her influence, not mine. The air was crisp, the kind that made you pull your sleeves down, but her knee pressed against mine under the table, warm and steady. Life wasn't perfect. Her son called sometimes, his voice tight through the phone, still adjusting to me being around. My friends raised eyebrows, asked questions I didn't answer. But the doubts that used to claw at me, her ex, the age gap, the fear I was a placeholder, had faded, worn down by quiet moments like this. We'd earned this, not with grand gestures but with mornings spent folding laundry together, her hand brushing mine when she passed me a sock, both of us laughing at the callback to that first night. She'd changed me, and I'd changed her. Eleanor smiled more now, her shoulders looser, like she'd shed some invisible weight. I'd stopped drafting unsent texts, stopped running from the loneliness that used to dog me. We didn't say, "I love you," it wasn't our way. Instead, it was in the way she left a mug out for me, the way I fixed the leaky faucet in her kitchen without being asked. It was in the silence we could sit in, no longer heavy but soft, like the hum of the dryer downstairs. Today, she reached across the table, her fingers grazing mine, chipped nails catching the light. "You're staring again, Nate," she said, her voice teasing, echoing that first time she caught me in the laundromat. I grinned, my thumb tracing hers, and for a second, I saw us back there, her behind the counter, me fumbling coins, the world smaller than it was now. "Worth staring at," I said, and she rolled her eyes, but her smile stayed. We sat there, the coffee gone cold, the city buzzing below, and I thought about that night in her kitchen, when she'd pulled me in and said it stayed between us. It didn't, not really, our lives had tangled too deep for that. But this moment, her hand in mine, the thermos between us, felt like something only we'd understand, a promise kept, a life stitched together, one quiet morning at a time.